Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of In Scope. Today we're joined by Ariel Davenport with Center Technologies. Got to know a little bit about Ariel, but Ariel, welcome. Would you tell these kind folks a little bit about yourself?
Sure, thank you. So my name is Ariel Davenport. I work at Center Technologies, and we are a Texas-based IT services company. We focus on managed services, IT consulting, security, and cloud services. So those are the things that we provide to our customers. And myself, I've been at Center for a little over 8 years now. I've been in the IT services space for about 15 years. With most of my technical experience has been in the data center infrastructure, server storage, cloud, Office 365, stuff like that. And over the last probably 3 years, my work at Center has been focused on our architecture group, which is essentially sales engineering. We support the sales team that is going out to our customer locations, making sure that the things that we say we deliver, we can, and we have the technology and the services to back up what we're selling to the customer. So that's kind of what we do. We're located in Houston, Dallas, Austin, and San Antonio, and we're growing. I think as a company, we're a little over 250 employees, and we're looking for more.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate the introduction there to kind of give us an idea where you're at in your background, and look forward to diving into these topics today. So yeah, I don't know if you know, Ariel, but I came from an MSP. I worked there for over a decade. Did all the things before I came over to ScopeStack, and so when you and I were talking earlier, you definitely hit on the right note of when we were talking about networks not being as unique as some customers may think. Kind of made me think back to a couple of solutions that we implemented in the past that the customer may or may not, we'll say, thought would work. but of course, that's kind of one thing that I'd like to talk to you about, and maybe we can hone in on some of that. So what do you mean by your network is not a snowflake? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically this topic of conversation comes up either with a technical contact at a customer's location, or if you're working internally with somebody else that has access to their environment, like the customer's environment, and is trying to scope out really anything, right? Whether it's a switch firewall replacement or a whole data center refresh. And it typically it manifests itself in it's either the customer saying, we do things a little bit different, we have to have this process this way for this to work and this to work, or sometimes it will be an overemphasis on minute details in the statement of work or in the process that really distract from the overall goal of like, what is the customer trying to get out of this? So that's typically where the problem shows up.
Right.
Have you seen that before?
Yeah. Too many times. We did it a lot in the healthcare industry, and so a lot of the healthcare customers, they where every customer is a little bit unique. I'm not saying they aren't, but the back end of their processes and procedures they may think is a little more unique than it actually is. At the end of the day, electronic health records kind of all work the same way. They all kind of do the same thing, those platforms. So once you learn the ins and outs of it, kind of goes hand in hand. So to them, yes, it's unique. To us, no, it's not that unique. And so I know those are some more difficult conversations, I'd say, for someone when you're talking about providing services for them, and then So I think there's some objection there sometimes. So maybe how would you overcome those objections? Like say you're talking about putting in a switch, firewall, wireless access points, and then they start talking about how unique something in that needs to be.
So I guess to your point, there are definitely unique things about each customer. Very seldom is a business 100% identical, but from a technology standpoint, most of the things can be, let's say, like 90% the same, right? That's a tremendous amount of similarity between two different projects. And the way that we overcome those, it's not even really an objection, because what typically is happening in those scenarios is people want to focus on, I want to see every line of how this is going to work out, because my organization operates totally different from everything else. So I need to see 500 pages of, or lines of, this is how this is going to transfer to this, how it's going to transfer to step two. And the way that you can typically get past that, and what I found good success in doing, is show similarities to the other customers that for them, right? It sounds super basic, but if I go into a healthcare customer and they say, actually, I'm going to use a sled customer, right? If I go into a sled customer and they've got concerns on how am I going to achieve CMMC compliance in the cloud, how am I going to be able to qualify for these different certifications that I need to achieve, I can, instead of trying to show them every 500 lines of here's how you would accomplish this, here's the statement of work to show that it's going to meet these things, we can draw parallels to other customers where we've done the same thing. So I can say, hey, for this customer, I've been able to achieve CMMC level 2 or 3. I've been able to do this with a customer that has criminal justice information system requirements, or a NIST standard that they need to comply to. So if essentially by providing references to customer experiences and the outcomes that you were able to achieve, you can kind of bypass some of that concern around, hey, this is unique and no one else has this problem. Because most of the things that people are concerned about why they're concerned about their network being unique is because they're very concerned about the outcome. They don't want to disrupt the end user experience. They don't want to put their compliance at risk. And if we draw those parallels and show that, hey, we did the same thing for 3 other customers that are your competitors, are in your same sector, it typically helps them feel very comfortable with the situation.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the key though, right? Is you got to build that trust. You have to make the customer feel comfortable. And like you said, if the project's well thought through, right, and you have a clean scope and you can provide that to the customer, that definitely, we'll say, gives them a warm, fuzzy feeling, about that, what the outcome should look like.
Yeah, definitely. For our processes internally, specific to our project delivery and professional services, what has also helped to kind of standardize some of the thoughts around how projects are delivered and how they're not really unique is we developed internally a project framework that consists of all of the things that are the same across all of our projects, regardless of whether they're accounted for or there's a separate line item on the quote for support. We know that support happens in every project, right? You can't get away from it. No one who is passionate about the type of work that we do is going to leave the customer hanging. So making sure that things that are critical to the success of that project are part of that scope is another way that you can help to standardize the way that people think about projects being standard or snowflake. Right.
Processes are everything. I think that could be a whole topic in itself. It seems like what I've noticed just over the years, I've noticed that when you hone in on specific projects, for example, let's say that you're migrating 365, right? Something every MSP has to do. Once you've done it so many times, I've noticed that a lot of companies they don't improve as they go. They say this is the framework and we're not going to waver from this. But at the end of the day, there's tiny changes that can happen in every project that you can just continuously build a process around, right? So I think, what you're saying, standardizing, almost templating your standards, I think that's key to a good delivery. I wouldn't be a good person to work for ScopeStack if I didn't say that ScopeStack does that really well. So shameless plug there for us. But I think that's a good point to make, that the technical delivery has to match the pre-sales. What you promise a customer, you want to make sure that it follows through and that people take pride in their work. That they're not going to leave a customer hanging, like you said. So I think that's a major step in the right direction for a smaller, less mature MSP to pay attention to. I think maybe the smaller MSPs, they have to iron out some of those things. I know as the MSP I worked for, as it grew, we started noticing that things can slip through the cracks with growth, and if you don't have good policies, that's easier to you're more likely to miss something.
Yeah, definitely. With some of the legacy quoting tools that we had, we essentially would build out those menu types of things. ScopeStack is another plug for you guys, but that has definitely helped us internally when we go to scope things like a 365 migration project, because now, rather than having to correlate, like, here are my notes from the customer conversation, things like, do they have public folders? Do they have AD Connect set up? I essentially have a menu to pick from, and I know that every one of these things is either on or off. And if it is on, then it's going to be approximately 4 hours for this portion of the setup. And I can take feedback from my project management group, put that into the statement of work, so that things are clear to the delivery consultant, clear to the customer next time. It makes I've never, I guess, when this process driven approach to project delivery as well as scoping, I was probably on the other side of things where, hey, we don't need to be this detailed. We don't need the process, because at that point in my life, career, whatever you want to call it, I was very much of, all right, show me the goal and we'll just do whatever it takes to get to the end. And that doesn't scale very well. That's hard to communicate across different territories, other lines of business, and having that structured approach, even if it's 90%, 95% of what ends up actually happening, is very, very helpful. As far as a tool for that using with customers, it's also a very powerful tool because it can help provide some meat or substance to the deliverable that you're showing them on the front end. Is, hey, we're not always the cheapest, we're probably not the most expensive, but here is a list of things that have to happen for this to be successful. And I know that because we've migrated X number of mailboxes, and these are the choices that you have to pick from to determine what kind of outcome you want for that 365 project.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, I think. And I like the story sell kind of thing, like when you're talking about, this is something that we've done for, maybe it's a competitor, maybe it's someone else. I think I really like that approach. I think that that people look at other companies that are well respected and that you may have worked with, and it's almost like a reference. Like some customers may actually ask you, hey, can you send me references? I used to love that question because I had so many. It was just like, oh, yeah, sure. We have a really strong customer base. They really love us. So use that, I think that's a big deal, and that also speaks to your company. The fact that you have those kind of stories just means that you guys do a great job. And so I think that also instills confidence in your customers.
Yeah, definitely. It's the things that we're able to provide our customers with, like through ScopeStack and through those stories, and just that being really involved in the front end from a technical standpoint, rather than different companies have different approaches, but sometimes they will sell a project that's comes from a catalog of things that are essentially buckets of hours. And customers don't always get the value that they think that they are getting if you're purchasing a large slice of something and there isn't the effort put in to show why their environment is fairly standard and they're going to get what they want out of it. So.
Right, and you guys are obviously being very transparent. That's key too. When you're talking with the customer and you're providing them with a scope of work, be upfront and honest. Like you said, we're not the cheapest, but we're not the most expensive either. And you guys are just being very transparent with your offering. I think that customers respect that. I think that it makes the MSP space as a whole look better. I know a lot of times the MSP space will get a bad name because someone got ripped off somewhere by some MSP, and then they're just, we're just going to bring all of our IT in house. We're not going to outsource this anymore. And I've heard that. I've went in behind those people and cleaned up the mess. And if you're being transparent with your customers, good on you. Because I think that's something that you should see more of in the MSP space. Sometimes the customer doesn't know what the customer doesn't know. They're not expected to know tech. It's not their job, right? That's why you're talking to them. So, people that take advantage of that kind of bothers me because I'm really passionate about the MSP space. But I do know I've seen the stories. I mean, I've heard the stories. I've seen the work where someone just talked over someone's head and got them to buy into something that they just completely did not deliver on. So it sounds like you guys are very transparent in all your offerings.
So when it comes to transparency with our customers, starting with our professional services or project consulting group, the statement of work is probably the easiest tool to use when working with a customer on that, because at the end of the day, the resources that we use are the same market type resources that are available to everyone, right? There's industry standard rates for system administrators, network administrators. The customer either has those resources or they don't. And what should it come down to is who is doing which task, right? So if we're doing a turnkey project for a customer and it's a competitive situation, at the end of the day, the statement of work is what's differentiating us between our competitors. I can't beat everybody on price. I will never know what the prices are, but what I can show the customer is, hey, here's a very detailed list of how we've been able to do these things and achieve this outcome for similar customers. And either you're doing these tasks or you're not. In my experience, if the task is on there, the hours that have been estimated for it on a line item basis are typically it's a very, very small difference, because a system administrator knows how long it takes to stand up a domain controller. Right. So when you have all of those standard things and you add them up to that Snowflake project, it typically helps to be very it delivers transparency to the customer. It helps you have a standard process internally. On the managed services side, one of the things that will even still related to our project group across Center as a whole, we have a concept of proof of value. And that's something that our CEO, Chris Pace, he's very adamant about. Like, we're not going to do something for a customer that is on a marketing slick, that's on a quote. We're not going to secure something or manage something if we can't show you the value that we're delivering with that, whether that's a project deliverable where we show everything that happened, or a managed services dashboard that shows you, hey, these are the backups that are happening. These are the ones that failed, because backups fail. Nobody has backups that are 100%. So we're showing the failures, we're showing the successes, and really communicating through the whole customer life cycle hey, here's what you're getting for what you pay for, or here's what you're getting for what you pay.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think that's key. There's no gotchas. You guys are telling them exactly what they're getting, and you touched on one thing too. That when you're building out a professional services, scope or quote, whatever you want to call it, the resources that are assigned to that. So if you're quoting customer ABC and another MSP is quoting customer A, B, and C, are they even telling them which resource is doing the work? Like for example, say you're say a security engineer is say we'll just throw out a number. Say a security engineer is $150 an hour, and a network engineer is $140 an hour. Who's doing that work? So I think being able to change those resource allocation and rate and showing your customer, that we're doing this because this person costs more to Centra than this person does. Center is this person's time's worth more. As much as it's kind of crazy as that sounds, it's true because I'm sure Center pays certain people more than they pay other people. A level 1 tech's not going to make what a security analyst makes. So if you're using a security analyst's time, you should be charging for it, and the customer can see that. If you show them that, they may ask the same thing from the other company. And the other company's like, oh, we just don't worry about that. Don't worry about who's doing that work. A level 1 tech can do that security infrastructure job. Don't worry about it. So it's more ways to prove that you're doing what you say you're doing. And I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah, there's almost nothing that is more satisfying to me than going through a statement of work with a customer, and typically like second screen or whatever, but we can say things like, all right, which tasks do we want to take off the statement of work? Which ones do you have resources that can take care of? Because to me, it really shows the value, like not the value, but it shows that, hey, we're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. We're transparent in what we're doing. The effort is the effort. And I have seen it go a very long way with customers when they realize that, oh my gosh, I can change anything in this document. And if it reduces the effort, it reduces my bill. I've had several customer conversations where it's like a light bulb goes off in their head and they're like, oh, this makes total sense now. But if we reduce the effort, the price goes down. And it should always be that way, but it's in a lot of situations it's not. And definitely if you don't have the tool set or the experience with that type of project as a company, it could be very hard to do.
Yeah, very hard to explain. I think that's awesome. That it's great to know that customers are starting to see those kind of things. I know, and we had another podcast not too long ago where we were kind of talking about. It wasn't quite the same, but it was. We were talking about how after COVID, like customers really started paying attention to technology, and I saw a push for that. Like before, it was just kind of like, oh, we don't want to do this or we do want to do that, and now it's like, well, let me look into this, because I think it really opened their eyes with everybody's going to work from home and all the things that had to be set up to do that, and so I think you started seeing more people, the light bulb go off, as you said, like, oh, wait a minute, this makes sense, whereas before it was almost they didn't even care. They just said yes or no, and they didn't really want to pay attention, so they didn't really know what all was going, how much effort was really going into a project. I mean, that's a lot of work. Most projects are a good bit of work, and they just customers may not understand it, but now it seems like they're actually reading into it. They're looking at the language, the service description language, and making sure that they understand a little more. I think that's interesting, to me, just to think that that COVID actually kind of changed that. It's kind of weird, but yeah, I like the transparency. I like that you guys are putting the resources to the level of effort and letting them actually see that. A lot of companies won't do that. So I mean, yeah, I think that speaks volumes to your group and to your CEO. Good on him for what he's doing there. Saying we want the customer to see everything. Do you guys send reports, like reporting from a tool monthly or quarterly or anything like that?
So we We do QBRs, right? There's a lot of tools in the space for QBRs and those types of things. Those tools are what we do those with customers.
Okay.
The other things that we use some BI tools to kind of aggregate data from across a bunch of different systems so that our customers have a live view into what we're doing. And they really appreciate that. I like it a lot because I can only imagine how frustrating it would be as a customer to need a report for how many assets are actually live, right? How many have checked in the last 24 hours? Is that tied to, or not 24 hours, but how many have checked in the last month? And how does that correlate to my bill? How do all of the things that you say you're doing in terms of security, backup, availability, performance, how do I know that all of those things are happening? And when you have a live data set that shows, here's what your whole environment looks like. This is the box that shows where your bill is being generated from. This is where you can see your ticket count and stuff like that. And I know a lot of this stuff probably sounds super basic, but until you can actually like flip your laptop around in a customer meeting and say, hey, this is a sample customer and this is live data, it goes a long way in terms of transparency because we've invested a lot in terms of money, time, effort to be able to put these together and show the customer that value. But it's a tremendous tool both for starting relationships with customers and for continuing to support them and maintain them because you're doing what you say you're going to do and you're showing them every day.
Right. I love it. The review process can be critical to your business for customer retention. I think you can build that trust and you can lose that trust very easily if it takes a while to build it, and to lose it, that really sucks. So you got to make sure that you're providing them with things to keep it, keep that trust alive. So I think that's great, man. And I just, I always try to, John and I, when we're doing these, we always try to ask, towards the end of the thing, if you had to give, I know we kind of touched on a few different things, but let's go back to the network's not a snowflake and the transparency, I think, are the two biggest pieces that we've covered today. So if you had to give a couple of pieces of advice to, say, a solutions architect who's been in the field for, let's just say he's a rookie, he's been a year, somebody really just starting out. If they were going into a customer's office and they're like, you don't understand, my network's different, what kind of advice would you give them to overcome that as far as that goes? And then secondly, what would you tell them to do early about starting transparency early with the customer?
Okay. So one of the big things or kind of caveats to what we talked about, a lot of what we talked about today on those two topics involves customer stories. And if you're relatively new, those could be a bit harder to come from. But I would definitely expand your scope of story. So that would be tip one, right? Learn what your organization has done. Talk to other accounting executives, other architects, things like that, and take those stories and don't brand them as your own, but brand them as, hey, this is what Center has done. I may not have done hands-on a CMMC project, but I have seen the deliverables. I've talked to the architects. I know I've helped on portions of that solution, so I can take that story, share it with someone as part of our organization's history.
Yeah, I love
so that would be probably the first thing to get information on so that you are prepared going into these. The next thing it gets better with experience, but don't get bogged down in the details, right? Gut check yourself when it comes to the statement of work and the bill of materials. The bill of materials typically needs to be 110%. The statement of work is probably going to be 90%, right? And the bill of materials is a detailed document that involves, hey, how many twin X cables do I have? How long do they need to be? Are they QSFP plus or QSFP 28 or QSFP, right? Those types of things can mess a project up pretty bad. But on the services side, it's very easy to find someone that gets kind of lost trying to figure out, what do I do next? How do I scope this? But in reality, the difference in effort between configuring a server that has, say, 4 network uplinks versus 2, there's no reason for that level of detail. If you're upgrading a vCenter server, does it really matter if it's version 6 or version 6.5? Probably not, right? There's a rough period of time that you can allocate to that task to get that outcome. So build yourself those templates, if you will, right? They start with the standard, throw a number at it, and see what works. Run it past a couple of people, and you will get better at that. I kind of laugh sometimes when I started. I used to check all of these different hourly estimates and stuff against some of my peers, and I'm very grateful to them for providing that feedback. But what I realized was this stuff is almost always similar, right? There's no rocket science behind knowing that this project is within 10% or 20% of where it needs to be. So that comes with time, but continue, check those things when they come up. But as you grow in the architect or pre-sales role, you'll kind of start to realize, hey, these people are coming back and saying the same thing that I came up with in the first place. So that I guess speaks to the confidence that you build over time in doing something. So in summary, it was really find those organizational stories that you can share as part of your own history and the organization's history. Don't get bogged down in the details on the services, especially if you have the processes to make sure that the customer outcome is achieved, right? Because at the end of the day, the statement of work can be slightly different or the tasks completed can be different than the statement of work if you achieve the goal.
Right. That's great advice. I agree 100%. Yeah, that's so. If someone wants to reach out, to you, what's the best avenue for them to reach out to you after if they've seen this and maybe just wanted to pick your brain on something?
Sure. So I am on LinkedIn. You can reach me there. I'm sure we can put the link there in the show notes. If you want to email me, that probably would be a little bit better. I tend to be kind of slow on LinkedIn when it comes to responding to people. So either one of those is fine. Okay,
awesome. Well, that about wraps it up for us, for you guys, for everyone else who's out there. Just if you're interested in ScopeStack, you can always take a look at ScopeStack through scopestack.io, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Ariel, I thank you for joining us today, and I hope the rest of your week goes great.
Thanks.
All right, we'll see you guys later.